Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to LIII Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we're going to be discussing diffusion, tophats, and my favorite, goo, on LIII Talk.
Goo! And this is David in the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to LIII Talk. And we are the Lumen Brothers. That was my tribute to 1970s FM radio.
Oh, my favorite Pandora channel.
70s Pandora. So anyway, well, welcome. I think this is episode 98. I think we're pretty sure of that. And we would like everyone to
send us $20
so we can learn how to count. Anyway, guys, guess our 100th episode. No, wait a second. We did our 100th episode. Oh, we're not. We're going to do our 100th episode, I guess, next week.
Are you having a senior moment?
I'm having a seizure. We're going to do our 100th.
Turn off the strobes in your house. Turn off those damn strobes.
We're coming up on our 100th episode, and we're very, very excited. And we have a special guest on our 100th episode, don't we?
Yep.
And who is that?
Don't tell
No,
them.
they can look at it.
It's a surprise.
It's Bobby Hale.
It's a surprise.
It's Bobby Hale from High End Systems.
Yes,
so we're very excited about that. And then, like 2 or 3 weeks after that, we've got our anniversary show. And boy, we have some surprises for you. We're going to have a whole gaggle of trained ducks that will basically replace all those Intel drones. So for every Super Bowl from now on, we're going to have a gaggle of ducks.
Not saying a word.
I don't think they fly very well, not the ducks that we have, but we'll do our best. Let's get started with the show. Steve has the first question.
And it is from Marcia in New England. And she writes, have you had a chance to work with the new Rosco Opti-Sculpt? I need to tame my psyche. Well, Marcia, I have had a chance to work with the Rosco Opti-Sculpt, and it's not meant to tame your psyche. So I would not use that. Opti-Sculpt is a really interesting product. Rosco just released it, I believe. It's a touch expensive, I think, but really what it's meant to do is to put on the front of a Lico, a hard-edged light. And that hard-edged light you can then shape. And you can shape it. I'm looking at their list here. It's about 13 or 14 different sizes from 10 degree to, 20 to 40 degree on the horizontal or the vertical. So it's not really meant to go, I don't think, into a psych light. I think it's meant to shape a beam. And you can really get that edge and that softness you want on an ellipsoidal. I think, dare I say it, you have heard it before, but I'm going to turn it over to Stan, and he can tell you how to soften your sight because he has found the perfect product.
Well, I just think that Opti-Sculpt, which I just had an argument with the Rosco people, and they sent me another set of samples, and I compared it with my 1 degree laser with the Luminit stuff that I love, which is also, as Steve rightly points out, is a beam shaping tool, right? And both, I think, are sort of intended to beam shape point sources, which is what a hard edge light is, or LEDs, which are point sources. And I compared the two. Now, I'm particularly interested in the asymmetrical diffusion, which Marcia might be thinking about for her side, because you want the light to go one way a lot and not the other way so much. So asymmetries. I did some testing, and the Opti-Sculpt did not perform in the same way that the Luminit did, and I sent them photographs of that. And they said, well, Opti-Sculpt is not designed to work with lasers because lasers is coherent light, blah, 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 blah. Well, the point is that both are great tools, either the Luminit or the Opti-Sculpt. I think the Opti-Sculpt is not as expensive. I find personally that the drop-off or the gradient at the edge is smoother in Luminit than it is in Opti-Sculpt, but it depends upon your applications. I just think that both of these tools that are out there now gives us a great way of gradiating our edges and really getting the kind of softness that we desire. So I like both, and I think they both have different purposes. But certainly the Rosco, even though it's more expensive than traditional diffusion, it gives you something better and of a higher quality.
Or you could just use wax paper.
If you're in a pinch.
And burn your theater down.
Would it be cool when the price comes down so much so that they'd be able to create an Opti-Sculpt lens on moving lights?
Ooh.
Then that would solve our diffusion problem that we've been ragging on these manufacturers forever about?
Let me say one thing that the Rosco Opti-Sculpt, they claim does better than I'm a bit of a Luminit fanboy, but I can be persuaded that the Luminit is not UV stabilized. So using the Luminit outdoors is not such a good idea, where they say the Opti-Sculpt is UV stabilized and would hold up under outdoor and daylight conditions if you're using it on an exterior of a building or something like that. So that's kind of a cool feature to know about.
So are you saying that if it's not UV stabilized, it will degrade over time?
Yeah, Luminit will degrade pretty quickly. They don't intend it to be used in outdoor applications. They make it on a substrate as well as on a film. So it depends. If you put it on if you were to put it inside, sandwiched it between UV glass and an architectural application, maybe it would last longer. But we're not really. Let me just go full circle, because Steve likes to point this out, and he's right, that we're not really answering Marsha's question. We told her that Steve feels that Opti-Sculpt is not quite right for the psych, and I think he's right. Well, what could we recommend to Marsha for taming her psych?
Lots of things.
Go ahead.
Lots of things. Well, grid cloth. Mm-hmm. You know who told me about grid cloth? Was Steve Wood's new student, Philip.
Oh. Yeah.
I was doing a show. He was assisting me. I was doing a show, and I had a bunch of, I guess they were MR16 strip lights. And, I was putting the, all that diffusion, directional diffusion on it,
right.
And blah, 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 blah,
Silks.
blah, 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 blah. And Philip told me that he learned a trick from Neil Jampolis, our friend, Neil, that if you use grid cloth, and grid cloth comes in several different textures, that works really well. So I said, hey, what the hell? Why not? So I bought 3 sheets of it, different textures. And sure enough, it worked great for that application.
Yeah.
So when I'm using MR16s, and I need to get a really nice diffused looks, I would use grid cloth. But I rarely use MR16s anymore.
Right.
I don't remember the last time I used an MR16 strip light.
We took some 80-degree omnidirectional Luminit and put it on those beautiful showline fixtures that Steve recommended for me, 30-degree beam angle, and we were about 2-3 feet from our site with the 80-degree Luminit, and you'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe that is spread so far and so evenly. Just remarkable stuff. But I think the Luminit is, rather the Opti-Sculpt is another flavor of that same stuff, and I'm glad that they've got it. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, how much intensity does the Luminit absorb?
Yeah, so this is what I and I haven't tested this with my meters, but I think the Luminit does a better job than the Opti-Sculpt of passing more light, less light loss in the Luminit, from what I could see with my eye, but I did not use a meter.
It doesn't matter if you're using the 640s or 660s.
That's true. That's way true.
If you turn them on at full, you might as well be on the bright side of the sun.
Yeah, it's true.
It's
absolutely true.
Yeah, we rarely push above 25%.
Yep, they're amazingly bright. Yeah, it's true.
Wow. I used those Robert Juliot strip lights last year at Central City, and they were amazingly bright. It's really quite incredible what's happening with LED strip lights nowadays.
Well, you have the next question, David.
Yes, I do. Look, hey, Doug in South Carolina wants to know, how do you use a top hat? And is it better than a barn door?
Oh.
Well, I only use top hats when I go out to formal occasions.
Yeah, I like the stove type kind like Lincoln had.
And I always close the barn door when my carriage exits the barn.
Now we're talking.
But seriously, folks, these are 2 separate things.
Two different purposes. Yes.
I don't even know why we even included it in the same sentence. They are so different. Okay, so here's the difference. Barn doors are usually used in Fresnels or PCs to cut off sections of the light. Obviously, in a PC, you have no second focal point, so you don't have a shutter mechanism, and you can't cut light with a shutter because there is no shutter. So what you do is you put the barn door on your fixture, usually 4 flaps of metal, that, by the way, can get very hot. So you don't want to touch them if they've been on for a while. And you can actually sort of cut things off on 90-degree planes. So you have top, bottom, left, and right. And then you can also turn the whole thing so you can do 45s if you wanted to. Anyway, so that's what a barn door does. And in a way, it does kind of hide the lens, but it's not meant to hide the lens. And why you say hiding the lens? Because that moves to our top hats. I have 2 words to use for top hats. Flair and glare. Flair and glare.
I have one more with another word, fleck.
Wait. Fleck.
Fleck. I'll explain.
Fleck.
I'll explain.
Explain it after I'm done with Flair and glare.
Go ahead.
Because I think Flair and glare would be a great comedy duo, right? I'm watching Mrs. Maisel, the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which, by the way, I think is the best program on TV right now.
It could be a sponsor name, Flair and Glare. That's good.
Flair and glare. Oh, glare and Flair. Anyway.
That's the episode. Yeah.
So, Flair. What does a top hat do? It controls the flare off the lens of the fixture. Meaning that, let's say you have a light hanging in a box boom, and you put some, 119 in it, or 132, or even just a thick gel. It really doesn't matter. A lot of times you're going to get flare coming off of the gel. It's going to go out of the field of the light and hit things around it, like a proscenium. For instance, in Venice, Italy, there's an amazing theater called Teatro La Fenice, which is, in my opinion, the most beautiful theater in the world. But the entire proscenium is white and gold. So if you have any fixtures close to that proscenium, and of course I do, I'm all over the place, a lot of flare is going to be illuminating that white and gold proscenium. So if you put a top hat on it, it controls that flare, because a lot of that flare is going to be basically reflected onto the inside of the top hat, and a good deal of it will be absorbed. Now, the other thing you're talking about here is glare. And what glare is the actual light that is glaring off of the lens of the fixture or of the gel frame. And that is something that you do not want to see. Because when a light comes up and there's glare on that lens or that lens area, your eye will go up there. Which is one of the reasons why we've talked in the past about being careful about fading things up with lights that the audience can see. So if I have a rule that if the audience could see a light, meaning any light front of house that's not hidden by a cove or something like that, then a top hat goes on to that light. Okay, now tell us about, what's her name?
Fleck.
We got Flair.
Mrs. Fleck. So Mrs. Fleck. So everything you say, I totally agree with. And there's one little thing that we fell in love with that you can buy. You can specify your top hats with black fleck on the inside, which is sort of like a black velvet somehow that they spray into the inside of the tube of the metal.
Oh my God! I didn't know this.
So when the light that is being captured by the top hat, if you have a line of sight into the inside part of the cylinder, the black fleck acts like, I'm going to say it again, Vanta Black.
Black!
And it sucks up all that light inside of the tube. So it's even better than a regular top hat is top hats with black flecking. I think it's called Fleck. And
my God.
we have a bunch of them in shorty top hats, half hats, and we get them from our friends, not to do a commercial, but at City Theatrical and Gary Fails.
Okay, now this is blowing my mind, because as I was saying that long-winded explanation, I'm saying, wouldn't it be great if they were able to line the inside of the top hat with something like Lumisuck?
It's called Black
or
Fleck.
Vanta Black, or even velour. Black velour.
Well, that's what it is. It is like velour.
We'll start our own fire. It's sort of like velour, right?
It's sort of like velour. Yeah, it's sort of like if you sort of chopped up velour and put it in those machines that sprays the popcorn texture on your ceiling, and that they spray the inside of the sheet metal with this black flecking. Maybe I'm making that word up.
Steve, have you heard of this? Or is Stan pulling our legs or what?
I think it's been around for a long time.
It has.
I think
yes.
they call it flocking, but it may be flecking. I think it's flock.
Isn't a flock,
I'm going to look it up.
Flare,
I'm going to look it
glare.
up right now. Hang on.
Wait. That's our new lawyers. Flock, fleck, flare, and glare.
I like that, David.
So, wow.
Okay, hold on.
Okay, this is embarrassing because everybody now knows that I'm truly a hack.
I think this has been around for like 37 years.
They have been around. You know who used to make them, Steve? Tell me if I'm right. They have been around for a long time. And back in the day, I think the only company that made them was Norcosco up in Minneapolis. Does that ring a bell?
No, but I want to. This brings up another interesting question here, and I'm going to take issue.
Oh.
I have top hats. I do not have half hats.
Oh,
half hats. I have half hats on TV shoots, but in a top hat, I have a top hat and I have an eyelash.
Oh, an eye. Is that what I should call it? Maybe am I calling it the wrong thing?
You can call it anything you want to, but I've noticed that eyelash, I think, is more descriptive. When I ask for
okay, I found the word. Let me interrupt you. This is right off the City Theatrical website, and it's called Black Flocked. Flocked. Interior. I called it. Did I call it Flecked or Flocked?
You said Flecked. But Flocked is even better.
I stand corrected. Steve, I think Steve is right. It is Flocked.
Flocked.
Flock.
Well, flock that. Let's move to goo.
Flock that.
Let's move to goo.
Let's get out of this and go right to goo.
Flocked and gooey. Gooey or flocked. Oh, my goodness. Okay. And these are tapered top hats, so they stack on top of each other.
I'll tell you why I don't know. Yeah, because it's been 37 years since I picked up a top hat.
Well, get with it,
That's
man.
why I have no idea what's inside of it.
Get going,
but
buddy.
I've been noticing, boy, those top hats are working really well.
They do work. It really does. In our black box space, which is a square,
right.
And sometimes we have people who insist on working in the round, and that's very challenging for us in terms of reducing the amount of lens in the audience's face. Those we have louvers, we have top hats, we have half hats, we have I guess we have eyelashes too, and we really like the flocked kind.
Right. Well, they also use that in architectural louvers and things like that, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's where I know it from.
That's an egg crate louver.
That's something to talk about when it comes to goo.
We're not up to goo yet. Oh, yes, we are. It's me.
Yes, we are.
I got this question from William, who happens to live, it looks like in Florida, somewhere near me. And he says, my cable is covered in tape and goo. How do you get this mess off? The goo probably came from the tape, which is the adhesive and so on and so forth. So how do you get the adhesive off of the cable? Well, I don't know. We have some stuff that we called Goof Off, which is a solvent, which takes it off pretty good. Back in the day, before we had any concern about our health, we used acetone. And I remember when I worked at Production Arts in New York back in the 80s, we had something that was in a can, and it had like a screen on a cylinder, and you would push down and it would wet your rag, and you would take it, and it would clean off the Pentel marker off the cables, and it would also clean off the goo, but I can't remember what compound that was.
It's called Gooby-Gon.
Gooby-Gon.
There's also something called Goo-Gon, right?
There's something called Goof Off, which will do paint.
Yeah, there's a Goof Off,
right?
Which is a heavy-duty remover, easily takes off sticker residue.
Yeah,
but the stuff that we're going to pull it off the Tawnry Brothers right now. They always talked about Gooby-Gon.
Gooby-Gon. Well, you know what? I'll share something personal. So I have to get an intravenous injection every 8 weeks, and now let's stay with me here. And I'm a kind of a hairy guy. I'm a little furry. So they put this this tape on top of the IV, and then when you're done, they got to rip it off. Yeah, well, ripping that off, let me tell you. So for a while, one nurse, really smart, he would just take these alcohol swabs and start to pull it back, and just the alcohol would dissolve the goo, and off would come nice. Now they actually have a product that you just spray. It's like a foam, and you put it on there, and it just goo is gone, and off comes the bandage. So I think it's the same kind. You just need the right solvent.
William, I know you're really disgusted right now. I would go with Simply Green. I would go with something that you know is not going to give you cancer. It's not going to melt your face off. Simply Green and an intern.
What's the intern do?
To clean the damn cable.
Clean the cable.
Let the intern get cancer. No, you're right. Simply Green is one of the best cleansers I've ever used.
Do they have one for that, for goo?
It probably works. I would just try it.
Green goo be gone?
I wonder if Dawn, it cleans ducks that have been submerged in oil. I'm wondering if something simple as Dawn dishwashing liquid would do it.
Steve, you may be onto something, because when we got some used screens, very expensive Stewart RP screens that had some staining, the person at LMG said, just use Dawn and water, nothing else. Dawn is amazing. So there is something about Dawn. You're right.
Well, there you go.
Well, now, goo's gone, and you are listening to Light Talk with Steve, Stan, and David, the Lumen Brothers. And Light Talk is sponsored by...
Spring is almost here, and the TL Tawnry Electric Company of West Virginia has been busy all winter with a new product line. You may remember the TL Tawnry Company, makers of the Juice Hose Jr., and the Never Trip Breaker. Well, now they proudly introduced the Twitch Switch. That's right, the Twitch Switch. Researchers at TEC in West Virginia have developed a hands-on remote called the Twitch Switch, the stand-alone device that connects you to your favorite console and gives you truly creative freedom. That's right, we're talking facial control. Who needs a touch screen when a wink, a smile, and a protruding tongue can control your favorite console? Now you can use that movable muscle in your mouth to control fade time. Just think what Gene Simmons could achieve.
Whoa.
A tip of your head will control pan and tilt, while hyperventilation will set your strobe rate. Actually, this idea doesn't sound crazy at all, provided you don't accidentally sneeze. The Twitch Switch, shipping now.
And now that I've got my twitches out of my system, back to Light Talk.
Well, speaking of protruding tongues, those ducks are back, obviously. Their tongues are protruding, and they're quacking away, which means it's time for our Let's Talk About segment. And today, we're kind of a couple weeks late, but better late than never, as they say. We're going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. What was it, 53? 63? 73?
53, and Pepsi had their name on it.
They always have their name on the Pepsi Super Bowl 53 halftime show. And there's a whole story behind this, but how boring this halftime show was, which almost matched the game. And it wasn't that it was boring visually. It was actually a lot going on visually. It's that they had these, this sort of jumble of acts. It looks like they sort of threw it together at the last second as all these other acts were canceling out because they didn't want to have anything to do with Roger Goodell and the NFL. Now, what do you do when you're a lighting designer and a show designer and you're trying to make this make sense? Or a show director, for that matter. What do you guys think?
There's some pretty pictures. There's some nice lighting, looks, But again, I always kind of feel like I love technology, but technology by itself without something artful and soul and heart under it sort of rings hollow. So I love looking at the stuff and the images, and I think the designers worked hard. It's an accomplishment to anybody to do a Super Bowl and work on that scale. But for me, it was missing heart. It was missing soul.
Let me just give out credit where credit's due. Of course, production designer, once again, Bruce Rogers from Tribe. Bruce has been doing this forever, and every show is like stellar. The lighting designer was Bob Barnhart from 22 Degrees. There's an excellent interview with Bob Barnhart in Live Design Magazine. I believe Ellen did it. I recommend that everyone check it out because he goes into detail exactly what the rig is, basically using layers of fixtures, which created layers of lights. Bob is an amazing designer. He's done several of these, of course, and does so much incredible work. And the lighting is always spectacular. He also talks a funny quote of his is that he says he loves pyro because it creates instant smoke, which is true. Who needs hazers when you've got pyro everywhere? He also talks about the lighting pods that he used, that they had planned them from the last Super Bowl, and they were very effective as well. But I recommend you checking it out. We're going to talk a little bit about the show itself. It seemed to be that the whole approach was about fire. I didn't really get any sort of concept except there was a giant M on stage from Maroon 5. So it did really look disjointed, I must say. And that had nothing to do with the creative team. I think it had everything to do with mixing this particular group of talent together?
I have two thoughts on this. My theory on the band. You know, if you look at some past artists who've done the Super Bowl, and, you know, I'll rattle off 5 or 6. The Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Prince. And you ask yourself what is different about those artists and, you know, Maroon 5 is that the aforementioned artists are all extremely successful in performing in stadiums before 100,000 people. Maroon 5 has always been a band that talks about an intimate moment, intimate affairs. So part of that is all of a sudden you take a band that you know, has talent, but that's not where they are at their strongest. Their strongest, I think, is in a smaller venue, even if it's an arena. I mean, there's a huge difference between 30,000 people and 100,000 or 110 or 150,000 people. Also, I think with Maroon 5, and I could be wrong about this, I don't think they've really been touring. I mean, the lead singer has had a pretty solid gig on The Voice. He's been there for a while. So, I mean, there was a lot of things that were kind of odd about that as far as just, you know, I thought they were off their game a little bit. And that may be because they're just not out there working every day of the week. But then I think if you look at the lighting, I think the challenge for a lighting designer on the Super Bowl is that, and I don't mean this in a mean, snitty way, I think you have to come up with a really great generic design that looks great on camera. You have what you have to do is fill that volume of space with light, make it appropriately big when it has to be, and somehow shrink it down to the stage. And I thought in that way the lighting designer did a really good job. That he made it big when it had to be, and he brought it down to that little ballot they did with the people surrounding him, as kind of a ready orange look on stage. He shrunk that thing right down. I think it was a difficult thing for everybody. You know, so many artists had pulled out because they were supporting a different kind of philosophy. So I don't know when Maroon 5 came on board, but I doubt they came on board a year ago. So I compliment them for having the guts to get on that stage and give it all they had. But I agree, it was disjointed. It was just odd. It was an odd mix of kind of music over the course of the evening, and I don't think that helped anybody.
Yeah, you know, I remember talking to Bruce about this many years ago. It's a rush to get this show designed. And there's got to be something that supports the band. Like, you know, remember Bruce Springsteen's stage, and also obviously Prince had a huge design around Prince. So it takes a long time to actually design it and manufacture it and figure out how to load it in and all that other stuff.
Or think back to Katy Perry coming on and that kind of Cleopatra moment being carried on stage, or Madonna. And I mean, my goodness. I mean, she must have lost 10 pounds in 3 minutes from all the acrobatics and dancing and that she did. And if you go way back into the Dark Ages, the thing that bothered me with the drum line is I remember when Fleetwood Mac did the Super Bowl, and there was, USC? They had their drum line out there performing Tusk with them. And all of a sudden, that meant something. Yeah,
but that was the whole point of my intro, is that all this stuff really had no meaning. It's sort of like, well, we did a drum line last year, we'll do it this year. We did drones last year, we'll do it this year. We did augmented reality, we'll do it again this year. The only thing that was new that was actually really weird was the whole animation scene with the SpongeBob SquarePants. No one, we were watching it at home. I was here with a group of people, and everybody said, "What is this?"
There was no connective tissue. Let's put it that way.
But let's talk about the lights, the VL10s.
The VL10s were that whole row of lights behind the band on the floor. And the VL4000 Wash, that really is the only light that can light a stadium from the distance they had them hanging.
Wow.
The 4000, that's something goofy like a 50,000 lumen light. But those 10s are the ones on the floor. and they're kind of fantastic.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
That 10 is also super bright, and it has a little single point source lamp in it. And, I mean, it's really bringing the light out of the front of the light. There's nothing being lost in there. And what's kind of fun is that the gobo in that thing is about the size of a penny. It is tiny, teeny tiny.
Wow. Really?
I mean, it goes down to like, I think 0.2 beam up to 48 degrees. It's really fast. They had to go to a metal gobo on board because the lamp was blowing out the glass gobos.
Wow.
The only way they could get a glass gobo to work is probably it's about the size of a silver dollar, and only a portion of the glass is hit by the light at any given time, and the rest of the glass is dispersing the heat.
So that puts the rest our Super Bowl 203rd, 53, right? 53rd halftime show. And I think that Bruce Rogers will be doing this forever. And he deserves it. It's beautiful work. The whole team was great. And
did you see next year's guest? They've gone ahead and booked next year's guest.
Yes, I do know.
Who was it?
It's me.
Yeah, it's no. Seriously, it's Simon and Garfunkel.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's got soul and heart. Are they really going to do that?
No.
Oh, you had me going there.
It could be the captain and Tennille.
No, they're dead. The captain died.
I wonder how closely guarded that secret is.
About the captain dying?
No, because they're negotiating with somebody right now. They probably have a tentative agreement immediately on who's going to do this. Richard in Texas writes, I'm in the market for a replacement for my A-frame ladder. Any suggestions? Well, I admire you. You must be young and spry to keep climbing that A-frame ladder.
And a very high voice. He has this very high-pitched voice.
And I hope you wear boots to lock your heels when you're at the top of it. Man, go to the bank, get a loan, get a Genie lift. There's a number of lift companies out there. You can buy them or you can lease them. But I know that Genie really wants to sell you a lift, and I know they will. I don't know where you are in Texas, but if you're anywhere close to a city, they will come and demo one for you, and you can see it, and you can run around with it and get all kinds of different things. But yeah, I think the A-frame, great thing, but it's awfully dangerous, I think. So I think I'd go with the Genie.
And you're assuming, Steve, he means the A-frame with a stick that you wrap your legs around, which is actually technically called the trestle frame, which are not even designed to be used that way. And I think it depends on how high he wants to go. We don't go that high. In my program, we don't go above 25, 28 feet. So we have a WP20, which you can drive from above, and it doesn't have any outriggers because it's heavy. It's sort of like a stock picker, and we drive it all around. And for the most part, if we need something high, we rent something for that particular event, and it works. We have two of them, actually. We just bought a new one. So I recommend that WP20. So the platform's at 20, and then you've got the height of your person and your arm reach, so you can be close to like mid-20s, high 20s.
Richard, I would like to point out before you buy Stan's Genie lift, you need to look at the architectural drawings of your theater and make sure you don't go through the floor with a heavy lift. I have a space, and we looked at that, and we determined it just wasn't safe in that particular space to drive that lift around. So I would find out about that.
It would sink down to the basement, right to the green room. Like, bam!
Well, it's true. Steve's right. It's heavy. Our stage can handle it, and our black box can handle it, no problem. And when we take it in the dance studio, we lay plywood down, and we track across the plywood.
All I know, guys, is that when I was a young tyke, hanging lights as an undergraduate at the University of Miami in a theater with no grounding. Should I say that again? No grounding. There were two wires that hooked up the light. There was no third wire. Right. And I would be on top of an A-frame, straddling it at around 16 feet. My right hand would grab the bar. My left hand would pull the light up and plug it in, and this voltage would run through me down that A-frame.
This explains a lot.
I was very happy that I was straddling that A-frame because I felt very safe on top of an A-frame. We all know it's not safe.
Did you have a pillow on the top rung for you?
No, I was a young man. Now I would need something else. But no, I couldn't even get my leg over it now. Okay? Those were the days. Hey, that Hammond organ solo back in the background there tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You should all check out our website on lighttalk.org for all our future guests, and be sure to follow us on our Facebook group page. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, and that way you will not miss a second of Light Talk fun.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
But remember, if you choose to litigate us, our solid-state law firm of Chip Onboard, Loose Driver, and Dimmeray will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you from Long Beach, Gainesville, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to tune in next week when we discuss who is the next lighting company to go bankrupt. Our pre-theater queuing process. Is there a difference between a technician and a techie? Inheriting sets? And what the hell is a backpack?
All of those topics and a new sponsor. Light Talk will continue to be broadcasting questionable Lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.